There are countless ways to know something, and many varieties of knowing. You're no doubt familiar with the type of knowing that is associated with your intellect. Who fought in the 80 Years' War? That fact that Lima is in Peru, and how to fix a flat tire are fact-based or procedural types of intellectual knowledge. That type of knowing tends to feel relatively clear. You know that you know some things, and you know that you don't know others. Intellectual knowing is improved by studying, practicing, rehearsing, memorizing, and other active pursuits. You seek out information, and that information adds to the base of knowledge you can usually access when needed. Knowing facts and understanding how things work is obviously important in many ways, but it is not without limits. Information is context-dependent. Your ability to fix a flat tire isn't going to help you when your house is on fire, and knowing that Lima is in Peru isn't going to help when you're lost in Africa. A different type of knowing is insightful knowledge. What you know insightfully tends to feel quite different from what you know intellectually, because insight is a deeper sort of truth. The fact that you love your dog, that visiting your grandmother feels like the thing to do, and that accepting a particular job does not, or even that you prefer asparagus to green beans is insightful knowledge. You still know what you know. In fact, you probably know these things with more certainty and in a very different way than what you know about wars, cities, or car parts. But you'd be hard-pressed to explain how you came to know them or why you feel the way you do. While intellectual knowing comes about actively, through reading or rehearsing information, insightful knowledge comes about more passively, through, you guessed it, insight. There is nothing you have to do, nothing you even can do, to guarantee an insight. Insight often occurs when you are open-minded and you aren't thinking too much about anything in particular. You do not need more information in order to end your habit for good. You have more than enough information already. In fact, all of the extraneous and misleading information you've heard about the nature of your habit may have made it more difficult to kick. What is needed to end your habit once and for all is insight. Insight changes behavior. Intellectual knowledge may not. Adrian was worried about her drinking. Her nightly wine habit had gone from 1 glass a few nights a week to 2 to 3 glasses every night. And when she tried to cut back on her own, she found it much harder than she expected. Although Adrian could rationalize that a couple glasses of wine at night wasn't all that bad, she was still a functioning member of society, raising young children and doing exceedingly well in her career. It was starting to feel as if the wine had had a hold on her, and she wanted to stop before it took over. When we began coaching together, we talked about the things you heard about in the first 4 chapters of this book. I shared with Adrian that her wisdom would be there to guide her toward what was best for her, especially as she learned not to obey every urge she experienced. We talked about the fact that her habit was her best attempt to feel better and that she was doing the best she could from where she was in any given moment. And we talked about how fleeting and ultimately safe our thoughts and experiences are, even urges, when we're able to glimpse what is always true about us beneath our human experiences. I suggested to Adrian that perhaps her habit was not personal in any way, and that suggestion was met with a huge sense of relief. Adrian's intellectual understanding grew by leaps and bounds. She could explain the lower and higher brain, and she saw that her fundamental nature was health and well-being, and that urges, like all thought, would come and go if she didn't interfere. Like any quick learner, she picked up the concepts and information right away, but also, like many people, she didn't have a deeper insight immediately. She got it intellectually, but not insightfully. How can I be so sure she didn't see things at the level of deep personal insight? Because her habit still felt like something that had control over her. The urge to pour another glass of wine was still something she saw no choice but to obey most of the time. Although Adrian was definitely beginning to see her habit differently, Her drinking showed us that there was room for Adrian to get it in a more profound way. Implications of insight. Intellectual understanding gives you a fuller perspective on concepts, but it doesn't necessarily affect you personally. Insight, on the other hand, changes you from the inside out. When you have a deep personal insight about something, you see a new truth that tends to naturally and effortlessly affect your behavior. In my book, Being Human, I recount a story from Byron Katie's book, I Need Your Love, Is That True? Katie tells of how she was once hiking in the Mojave Desert and came upon a rattlesnake. She was instantly paralyzed with fear. Images of someone finding her body weeks later flashed through her head. In her terror, something made her take a second look at the rattlesnake. When she did, she realized that the snake was actually a rope. In that moment, Katie had an insight. A moment earlier, she had been positive that what she saw was a snake. Now, no matter what she told herself, she simply could not bring herself to be afraid of the rope. She saw the exact same object in a new way, and her thoughts, emotions, and behaviors radically changed as a result. Although that story is a great example of how insight changes behavior, I don't want to leave you with the impression that insight is always that dramatic and impactful. Huge aha moments, like Byron Katie's, happen, but they are the exception rather than the rule. More often, insights are small and subtle. It's not just that you might not have a lightning bolt from the sky kind of experience. You might not even realize you had an insight at all until your behavior changes or life simply starts to feel different in some relatively subtle or indescribable way. I had an insight about my own binge-eating habit, or maybe it was a string of insights, I really don't know, that made way for my old behavior to fall away quickly and relatively easily. I didn't learn and employ any steps to end my habit. It didn't feel active on my part, although that's not to say that I didn't consciously do some things. It was more that I saw my habit in a new light, and when I did, it didn't look like something I was powerless over, and so the behavior began to die out. Insight imparts the sense that nothing changes, but everything is different. That's exactly how I felt. The only thing I had actively done was take in the teachings of my spiritual mentors and the information in Brain Over Binge with an open mind, and then follow my own internal inclinations about what to do. Nothing much changed on the outside, but everything was different. As my talks with Adrian continued, things began to resonate with her beyond the level of intellect. Although we had talked many times about the fact that her urges were impersonal and somewhat predictable, she heard that message in a different way one day, a way that gave her a sense of distance from what was taking place in her mind. She began to view her lower brain as an urge-producing machine, and her urges felt far less meaningful and far less threatening than they ever had before. She saw something in a new way, and she suddenly felt different in relation to her urges, with little conscious effort or practice on her part. Adrian didn't instantly or completely stop drinking, but her drinking behavior did change. Most of all, it felt different. Adrian enjoyed brand new thoughts and was closer to change than she previously had been, by seeing rather than doing. That's insight.